A hidden letter shatters her past now. Celeste must uncover the truth before it destroys her future. I wasn't snooping, I swear I wasn't. It was nearly 2 in the morning and I couldn't sleep, not with Miles breathing so steadily beside me, not with the weight of something unnamed pressing on my chest. I turned toward the nightstand, reaching for a glass of water, when his phone vibrated. It lit up the dark like a small explosion. I wouldn't have looked, I didn't want to look, but my eyes, my tired, aching eyes locked onto the words on the screen as if they were meant for Memi. Silky Tiger, you are incredible. I miss you already. Thank you for the 2 unforgettable nights. My hand froze midair, my pulse roared in my ears. Tonight he was supposed to be in Houston for a leadership summit. The thought of him in a hotel room with someone else while I made pot roast and helped Mira with her history project made me physically ill. I stood up on shaking legs and stumbled toward the bathroom. The cold tiles under my bare feet grounded me. I turned on the faucet, cupped icy water in my hands, and splashed it over my face, hoping to wake up from whatever this was, but I didn't wake up. In the foggy mirror, I saw someone I barely recognized. My skin pale, my eyes wild, my mouth slightly open like it wanted to scream but forgot how. 20 years, I whispered to my reflection. 20 years of my life. I don't know how long I stood there. Eventually, I returned to bed. Miles hadn't moved. He was curled up, peaceful, just like always, like nothing was wrong, like everything was still perfect. But something inside me had cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to change everything. Next morning, sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, making everything look too bright, too ordinary. Miles rushed through breakfast, sipping coffee like it was any other day. You look pale, he said casually, buttering a piece of toast. Didn't sleep well, yeah, I replied, placing his coffee cup in front of him. I had a strange dream in it. Everything I believed in turned out to be a lie. Paused just for a second, then smiled. Dreams are weird like that, but we're real. Celeste, you and me were so He smiled back, but the hollowness in my chest throbbed. I watched him kiss my cheek, grab his briefcase, and leave with the same ease he'd always had, and I stood there still holding his empty plate, my fingers twitching with the urge to throw it against the wall. Instead, I picked up my phone and called the one person I thought I could trust, Tamsin. I said, trying to sound normal, can you meet for coffee? I really need to talk. She didn't ask why, just said she'd see me in 30 minutes at our usual place. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and warmth. Tamsin was already there, seated in our favorite corner booth, nursing a latte. Her auburn hair was perfectly curled, her makeup flawless. Like always, you look awful, she said, half joking, half concerned. What happened, Etmals? I blurted, my voice louder than I meant. He's cheating. Blinked. Her fingers drummed nervously on the side of her cup. What makes you say that? He didn't answer. Instead, I held up his phone screen. The text, the one still burned into my brain. Her eyes locked onto it for a split second. Something flickered in her expression. Guilt, shock, fears. Someone's tiger now, I said bitterly, and I was the idiot who thought we were unshakable. Edmson looked away. Maybe it's not what it seems. On, I cut her off. Don't defend him, don't make this softer than it is. Said nothing. A cold thought slid into my mind, then sharp and sudden. Why was she defending him? Why did she look so uncomfortable? Why was her voice too high, too quick? Him leaving, I said, standing up. I'm taking the kids and going to my parents' place in Blue Ridge. Rowan comes home from college this weekend and Myra's still on her school trip. I'll pick them both up and that's it. I'm done. Adamson just nodded, staring into her coffee as if it held answers I wasn't meant to hear. Are you sure? She asked almost too quickly. It's a big decision. You think I should stay? I narrowed my eyes, pretend this didn't happen. She hesitated for just a second. That second was enough. Whose side are you on? I asked sharply. Mine or his? Yours, she said, too fast, too defensive. Of course yours. I don't want you to do something you'll regret. No, I said, I regret staying this long. And with that I left her sitting there holding her cup like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. She didn't follow me. She never did. He almost forgot Myra's backpack. Had packed everything, clothes, toiletries, her favorite pajamas with the little stars on them. But the school had sent home a reading packet that was due Monday. Her books were still in the front closet. I cursed under my breath as I parked in front of the house, heart pounding harder than it should have. The sun had set, shadows stretched across the lawn like arms. The driveway was empty. Miles wasn't supposed to be home yet. I told myself I had 15 minutes, maybe 20. Just grab the backpack and go. I moved quickly through the house. The air felt different, like it didn't belong to me anymore. As I reached for the closet door, I froze. The sound of a Key turning in the front lock sliced through the silence. My blood turned to ice. He wasn't supposed to be here, not yet. I panicked. The back door. I could sneak out through the kitchen and down the side yard. I didn't want a confrontation, not tonight, but... Then I heard it, a woman's voice. "Don't be so nervous," Miles said with a chuckle. "She has no idea." And then the reply, "I don't know. She seemed different this morning, like she knew so." Mithinji stopped breathing. That voice, that soft high voice that used to whisper secrets in college dorm rooms and comfort me during hospital stays. I would know it anywhere. Tamsoni backed into the kitchen wall and felt the world tilt sideways. My throat clenched so tight I couldn't even gasp. My best friend, my maid of honor, my daughter's godmother. I stood there paralyzed, one hand gripping the edge of the countertop. As footsteps moved through the foyer, I heard them laugh, heard Miles say something about finally being alone, heard Tamsin sigh like it was a relief. They were heading upstairs to our bedroom. Each creak of the staircase hit me like a slap. I used to love that sound. Miles used to carry me up those steps when we were young and stupid and thought love could shield us from anything. Don't know what made me move, but suddenly I was climbing the stairs after them, one foot in front of the other, my knees shaking, my hand trailing along the banister like I might fall. The door to our bedroom was ajar. Light spilled through the crack. Golden and warm voices, laughter. He took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and flipped the light switch. The room snapped into clarity. Miles froze, shirt half unbuttoned, his hair a mess like he'd just been running his hands through it. Tamsin stood beside the bed, her face pale, hair tangled, eyes wide with horror. "It's not what it looks like," Miles said too fast, stepping away from her like that would undo anything. She tilted my head. "Really?" I asked calmly, "because it looks a hell of a lot like my husband and my best friend were about to screw each other in my bed." Tamsin opened her mouth, then closed it. Her lips trembled. She looked like a ghost. Miles began. "Don't," I said. "Don't even try." He looked wounded, like I just stabbed him. The irony almost made me laugh. "You know," I added, my voice like ice, "you two could have picked any bed in the city, but no, you showed real dedication. You went for the symbolism." Hindsight, I was unraveling. My whole body felt like it was vibrating, but outside, I was still steady, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. Tamsin tried to speak again. "Celeste." "No," I said sharply, turning to her. "You don't get to say my name." "Not no." She flinched. "You remember how many times you told me I was lucky, that Miles was a dream husband, that we were the perfect couple? Was it all part of the game?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "Don't answer," I whispered. "I already know." Miles stepped toward me. I held up my hand. "Don't come any closer," I said. "I don't want to hear your explanations. I don't care, because I have both your little texts in my phone now. My silky tiger, my tigress." How poetish. Paled. I packed my things. I continued. "The kids are coming with me. You two can have each other. Enjoy your little jungle." And I walked out. He called after me. I didn't stop. I carried my suitcase down the stairs, past the photos we once took in Paris, past a coat rack Myra helped decorate with stickers. Miles followed me to the door, pleading, "Please, this isn't what you think." "No," I cut him off. "It's exactly what I think." Reached for my arm. "I love you, Celeste." I turned to him. "Eyes, too bad you forgot to tell your tigress." Then I opened the door and stepped out into the night. Weeks following that devastating moment blurred into a strange quiet for Celeste. The city moved on as if nothing had happened, and she drifted through it like a shadow in her own life. The soft clatter of her heels on the hospital floor echoed like distant thunder. Her job at Stedy Matthews Medical Center became her only anchor, but even the familiar rhythm of shifts and rotations couldn't silence the noise inside her mind. Colleagues noticed a change. She laughed less, paused longer, and moved like someone walking underwater. Some chalked it up to exhaustion. Others assumed heartbreak. No one suspected the truth. Not yet. When Celeste walked into the hospital conference room one gray Thursday afternoon, her supervisor, Dr. Leanne, gave her a half smile. Celeste nodded and sat beside the window, her gaze tracing the raindrops racing down the glass. Across the table, Dr. Anwar, the ER director, tapped his fingers restlessly against his tablet. "We've got an influx of patients coming in from the Southside fire," he said. "Multiple burn victims, possible chemical exposure. We'll need all hands." Celeste barely nodded. Fires had become more frequent lately. She knew the pattern. An explosion, sirens, and then a flood of pain arriving in waves. But something twisted in her gut when she heard the address. 402 Langston Drive. That was near the Haven, the art studio. Julian once mentioned buying for her. She excused herself early, claiming to prep supplies. Instead, she slipped away to the supply room and dialed the number Julian used to call from. It rang 4 times before going silent. No voicemail, no click, just silence. Her heart thudded like a war drum. She told herself it was coincidence. She lied to herself beautifully. As victims began to pour in, the air became a battlefield. Screams, weeping, commands shouted over beeping monitors. Amid the chaos, Celeste moved like instinct. Her hands were steady even as her mind spiraled. It wasn't until they wheeled in a man with third-degree burns across his back and shoulder that her breath caught in her throat. The man's face was partially scorched, but it was the chain around his neck, the one with a broken guitar pick, dangling from it, that froze her. Julian. She stumbled back into the wall. A nurse glanced at her but said nothing. Celeste forced herself into motion. She wasn't assigned to his case. She shouldn't interfere. But she couldn't leave. Not until she knew. Later, alone in the locker room, she searched the hospital system for Julian's intake file. The name listed was Jonathan Ray. No emergency contact. No known allergies. But the height and weight matched. The necklace. The scar on his right forearm. It was him. It had to be. Why would he use another name? Why hadn't he told her where he was really going? Questions scratched against her ribs like broken glass. That night, sleep refused to come. Celeste stared at her ceiling, watching shadows shift with the passing headlights. She remembered the day Julian gave her that guitar pick, their anniversary, drenched in music and wine. He called it a promise. Now he wore it like a secret, driven by something she couldn't name. Celeste returned to the hospital early the next morning. She found his room. He was awake, groggy but lucid. Bandages wrapped around half his body. When their eyes met, something in his expression broke. Celeste, he rasped. She shut the door behind her. What happened to you? She asked, voice trembling. What were you doing near Langston? He looked away. It wasn't supposed to go like this. Like what? His silence was louder than anything he could have said. Over the next few days, Celeste kept checking in on him. Julian remained vague. He said he was working on a side project, something risky. He told her he faked his name for privacy. He insisted it was about protecting her. But even as he spoke, she saw the fear etched into his features. It wasn't until the third night that she found the flash drive. It was hidden in a zippered pouch in Julian's duffel bag, shoved beneath his spare clothes. She hadn't meant to snoop. She was looking for his phone charger. The drive was small, nondescript. But curiosity, no. Suspicion overpowered her hesitation. At home, she plugged it into her laptop. Files flooded the screen. Photos, documents, surveillance footage, bank transfers, blueprints, and a name. Viktor Malkovich. Celeste stared, frozen. Viktor Malkovich was the CEO of Architect International, a weapons manufacturer with rumored links to black market deals and political bribery. His name had been whispered in scandals but never proven. No court case ever stuck. Now here he was on Julian's flash drive. She opened a folder labeled Nightshade. Inside were diagrams of chemical weapons, communications between executives, and a video clip. She clicked on the video. The timestamp read 2 weeks ago. In the dim footage, Julian sat across from a man in a suit. Do you have the rest of it? The man asked. Julian nodded. But I want out. After this. The man leaned forward. You know too much to walk away. Now. Celeste slammed the laptop shut. Her breath hitched. Julian wasn't just a bystander. He was inside something huge and terrifying. And now she was too. She went back to the hospital. But Julian was gone. Discharged early. No forwarding address. That night, her apartment was broken into. Nothing was stolen. But her drawers were ransacked. Her files overturned. Her laptop left open. The flash drive was gone. And on her bathroom mirror, scrawled in red lipstick, was a single message. Stop digging. Celeste stood there, heart pounding, staring at her reflection. The woman who looked back at her wasn't the same person from a week ago. That woman was gone. She picked up her phone. There was only one person who might still have answers. One person who owed her the truth. She dialed Julian's number again. This time, it rang once before connecting. "Celeste," Julian whispered. "You need to leave the city. Now." The sun rose like a reluctant witness over the skyline of San Clemente, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward the sea like whispers of things unsaid. Celeste stood at her bedroom window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, watching the soft light creep across the hardwood floor. Everything felt cold despite the warmth of the morning. The revelations from last night still throbbed in her mind like a bruise she couldn't stop pressing. Miles had stayed after the incident at the gallery. They hadn't spoken much, just sat together in silence as the night stretched endlessly. When he finally left, Celeste didn't sleep. Instead, she replayed every moment in her mind: the note slipped beneath her door, the anonymous messages, the sense that someone was always watching. The envelope she found last night was still on her dresser. She picked it up with trembling hands, slid the contents back out. Photos of her and Miles, the one of her in the cemetery, another outside the medical center. There was no question now. Whoever was behind this wasn't just trying to scare her. They were mapping her life. And they were close. She packed quickly. If the threats were escalating, she couldn't stay in the same place. She booked a suite under a different name at a seaside inn several miles away. Miles didn't answer her call, which only deepened her anxiety. Had she pushed him away for good? Or was he avoiding her for his own reasons? Celeste knew one thing: she had to find answers. She had to find out who was behind the trail of destruction, who knew her so well. She drove to the hospital where her mother used to work. If the messages were about the past, maybe they were tied to the secret her mother died protecting. The archives were dusty and dim, a forgotten wing of the old medical building. After nearly an hour of searching, she found it: a patient file with a name she hadn't seen in years. Evelyn Crow, her biological mother. The photos in the envelope, the cemetery. The name Evelyn whispered in the letters. It was all connected. Her adoptive parents had hidden the truth. Celeste was not just a girl from privilege and polish. She was the daughter of a woman who vanished without explanation. She drove to the last known address listed in the file. It was a weather-worn cabin on the outskirts of town, surrounded by trees that whispered with secrets. As she stepped onto the porch, the door creaked open before she could knock. An older woman with fierce gray eyes stared at her. "I knew you'd come," the woman said. Celeste froze. Her voice trembled. "Are you Evelyn?" The woman didn't answer. Instead, she stepped aside. Inside, the cabin was filled with paintings, all of Celeste. Every age, every face, rendering so lifelike they made her breath catch. "Why did you disappear?" Celeste asked. The woman turned slowly. "To keep you safe. They didn't want us together. They tried to erase me, but I knew you'd find me." A storm was building outside. Thunder rolled, as if echoing the tension that had found its way into Celeste's chest. Her phone buzzed. Another anonymous message. "Leave her, or she dies." She showed Evelyn the message. The woman's face tightened. "It started again," she whispered. "Back at the inn that night." Celeste and Evelyn tried to piece it together. Evelyn spoke of a man, a doctor at the hospital. Powerful, dangerous. He had tried to cover up a medical scandal, and Evelyn was the whistleblower. She had been silenced, her record scrubbed, her daughter taken. Now he was back, and he wanted Celeste out of the way. In the morning, Celeste found Miles waiting outside. His face was pale. "I know who's behind this," he said. Before she could respond, a car screeched into the lot. A man stepped out, sharply dressed, eyes like glass, smile to controlled. "Celeste," he said, "I'm Dr. Langston. I believe you're looking into things you don't understand." Miles stepped between them. "Stay away from her." Langston tilted his head. "You have no idea what she is, do you?" The wind picked up as the clouds rolled in, and the past rushed forward to meet the present. The room felt too small for the weight of what Dr. Langston had just implied. Celeste's heartbeat thundered in her ears as she stood frozen, eyes locked on the man who had haunted the edges of her mother's stories, now standing before her in flesh and bone. "What do you mean?" "What I am?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Langston offered a mirthless smile. "You think this is about a family reunion? About lost mothers and hospital cover-ups?" He leaned closer. "This is bigger than your grief, Celeste. Much bigger. Miles moved forward, placing a hand lightly on Celeste's arm. She didn't flinch, the familiar weight of his touch grounding her in the chaos. Langston didn't wait for an invitation. He slid a small black folder from beneath his coat and tossed it at her feet. "When you're ready to stop playing detective," he said, "read it, then decide whose side you're really on." With that, he turned and walked back to his car, tires skidding as he vanished down the cliffside road. Celeste picked up the folder with trembling hands. Inside were documents, genetic reports, hospital logs, lab memos, all referencing a project called Artemis. Her name was on several pages, flagged in red. "What is this?" she whispered, flipping through pages that made less and less sense. Miles took the folder and scanned it quickly. "These aren't medical records," he muttered. "They're experiments, human trials. Your name isn't a patient file, it's a subject ID." Celeste sat down hard on the stone steps outside the inn, Evelyn joining her silently. "He said they wanted to erase you," Celeste said to her mother. "But why me? Why mark me?" Evelyn's gaze darkened. "Because you weren't supposed to survive." She stood and walked slowly toward the edge of the cliff. The wind tangled her silver hair, and her voice was nearly carried away by the waves below. "I was pregnant when I exposed what Langston was doing, illegal trials on newborns with compromised immune systems. Your father, your biological father, was one of the researchers. I didn't know until it was too late." Celeste's breath hitched. "So he was part of this?" "Yes," Evelyn replied. "He volunteered you without my consent. You were injected before birth, part of some new regenerative protocol they were trying to patent. They called it Artemis, said it would redefine the boundaries of human immunity, but the other children died." Celeste felt the ground shift beneath her. "I survived." Evelyn nodded, tears filling her eyes. "And that made you dangerous, living proof of an experiment they buried." Miles stepped forward, urgency in his voice. "We need to go public. Expose everything." With this, he held up the folder. "We can bring him down." "No," Evelyn said firmly. "You expose him now, he'll destroy her before she can speak." Celeste rose, the cold wind numbing the fire in her chest. "Then what do we do?" Evelyn turned. "We run, until we can find the others. There were researchers who defected, who hid the rest of the data. If we can find them, we can finish what I started." Just then, the innkeeper ran out, breathless. "Miss," she gasped, holding out Celeste's phone. "This just came through." On the screen was a video. Miles tied to a chair, a needle hovering over his neck, a voice behind the camera, unmistakably Langston's, cold and deliberate. "You want the truth, Celeste? Come and get it, alone, or he dies." Celeste's scream was swallowed by the crashing waves below. The next morning, Celeste couldn't shake the image of Dr. Langston's eyes, calculating, cold, and unnervingly familiar. Evelyn paced the length of the inn's suite, her hands trembling despite the mug of tea she clutched. Miles stood near the window, scanning the parking lot as if expecting another unwelcome guest. "He knows you're close to the truth," Evelyn said at last, her voice tight. "Langston never forgives, and he never forgets. He will come after anyone you care about." Celeste nodded, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She was angry, furious that her life had been manipulated, that her mother had been erased, and that Langston was still out there controlling people like puppets. "I need everything you have on him," Celeste said, grabbing her notepad. "Dates, locations, records, anything. We expose him. We go public." Evelyn hesitated. "That won't be enough. He owns media outlets, the board of directors at the hospital, even some officers in the local precinct. The only way to beat Langston is to destroy him from the inside before he has time to rebuild." Miles turned. "I might have something. Back when I was an intern, I saw files, hidden ones related to a covert clinical trial. Patients died. It was buried. I didn't understand what I was looking at. But if it connects to Evelyn's story..." Evelyn's eyes widened. "That was the trial I tried to stop. He falsified the results and framed me when I leaked concerns. The hospital deemed me unstable, unfit to practice. Then I disappeared." Celeste's heart pounded. This wasn't just a personal vendetta. It was a cover-up that had ruined lives. She could feel the pieces locking into place. Later that evening, Miles took Celeste and Evelyn to his old university lab, where he still had access. He pulled up archived digital files, long forgotten but not erased. They found patient records, with mismatched dates, consent forms with forged signatures, and one video file damning in raw. It was a recording of a board meeting. Langston's voice could be heard clearly. If she opens her mouth, we end her. Understood? Celeste exhaled sharply. This was it. The leverage they needed. But then the power flickered. The computer screen went black. A second later, the fire alarm blared. He knows we've found it, Miles muttered. He's erasing the evidence in real time. They grabbed what they could and fled into the night. Back at the inn, a security alert buzzed on Celeste's phone. Someone had broken into her apartment. A video feed showed drawers tossed, canvases slashed, and a final message left on her bathroom mirror, scrawled in red. "Stop digging or you'll be next." Celeste stared at it, calm and cold. She turned to Evelyn and Miles. "We don't stop. We go deeper. We make him wish he never touched us." They hid out in a borrowed cabin in the mountains as the storm outside mirrored the one rising inside Celeste. For days they reviewed what they had salvaged: partial files, one copy of the board meeting video, and Evelyn's journal from the time of the trials. Miles reached out to an old mentor, Professor Randall, a whistleblower specialist known for taking on corrupt medical conglomerates. He agreed to help but warned they'd need more than digital files. They needed a live witness from the trial era. Someone who hadn't disappeared. Celeste remembered a name from Evelyn's notes: Carla Jensen, a former nurse who had quit abruptly right before the fallout. Using burner phones and encrypted messages, they tracked her to a remote farmhouse in Maine. Carla had aged, and fear clung to her like a second skin. But when she saw Evelyn, she broke down. "I thought you were dead," Carla whispered. "They told us you'd overdosed. They told everyone that," Evelyn replied. Over the course of hours, Carla confirmed everything. She had copies of incident reports, patient complaints, and even an audio recording where Langston coerced a dying patient's family to sign a gag order in exchange for compensation. It was horrifying. It was the final piece. They sent the package to Professor Randall, who began preparing a legal case while also leaking pieces anonymously to international media. Headlines spread fast. Renowned doctor linked to medical cover-up. Langston's empire trembled, but didn't fall. That night, the cabin was breached. Gunshots shattered the windows. Miles was hit in the shoulder. Evelyn screamed as she pulled him to the floor. Celeste ran for the fire escape route they'd mapped days ago. They barely made it out. Bleeding and desperate, they drove all night to New York, where Randall had arranged a safe house. Miles recovered slowly, refusing painkillers, insisting he stay lucid. Celeste stayed up with him most nights, bandagging his wound and tracing her fingers along the edge of her mother's necklace, the one Evelyn gave her. In that safe house, something changed between them. Celeste wasn't sure if it was fear or the closeness of surviving together, but Miles kissed her one night after she returned from a supply run. It was tentative, reverent. She kissed him back. In that moment, it felt like a rebellion against the darkness, a way to prove they were still alive, still human. Weeks passed. Randall arranged for them to testify via video before an international tribunal, bypassing local corrupted systems. When Celeste spoke her truth, laid out every manipulation, every loss, and every moment she uncovered, the room was silent. Langston was arrested attempting to flee the country. He denied everything, but the evidence had momentum now. A reckoning had begun. The trial was televised worldwide. Celeste watched from a gallery, Miles's hand gripping hers, Evelyn seated proudly behind her. Witness after witness took the stand. Carla Jensen, Professor Randall, even former board members turned on Langston to save themselves. The video files, the forged records, Evelyn's journal, every piece fit like clockwork. Langston's defense crumbled. The moment the verdict was read, a shudder ran through the room. Guilty on all counts. Celeste didn't cry. She just breathed, deeply, fully, like she hadn't in years. Afterward, she visited her mother's grave for the first time, now marked properly with her full name and the truth. Evelyn stood, Beside her, no longer a ghost, but a woman returned from the dead. They planted wildflowers together. Celeste returned to her art. Not the chaotic bursts of therapy from before, but vivid, haunting portraits that told her story. The gallery that once rejected her now begged for a solo exhibition. She agreed, but insisted one condition: the opening would be dedicated to victims of corruption and silenced truth. She and Miles moved into a small loft overlooking the Hudson. Sometimes they fought, sometimes they drifted, but they always came back to each other. Healing wasn't a straight line, but it was a real one. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Miles handed her a sealed envelope. It was addressed, "From the International Court." Inside, one sentence: "New evidence suggests Langston had accomplices still unaccounted for." Celeste stared at it, then met Miles's eyes. "Then we're not done yet." And for the first time, she smiled not with fear, but with fire.